Okie doke. So welcome. I'm Justin. I'm the former head coach for Mesa Rim Reno and current customer experience manager for Mesa Rim North City that is yet to open, but it's coming along quite well. We drove by it the other day and got a chance to see it, and it's looking pretty great. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about high intensity interval training. So what is it and how do you go about doing it? So I'm going to just give a quick overview of the reasons why we would do it in a smaller space and what about it that's effective, and a couple things about it that are kind of frustrating as well and make it not the best workout to do consistently all the time. And then we're gonna look a little bit. I'm gonna try and see your form since you're comfortable, so if you're on video, and you as being involved in the group, your video is not shared on the recording that we then upload to YouTube. So the only thing that's actually being videoed right now is me in the chat. So if you feel comfortable, you can demo yourself too. Don't feel like you're going to be put out to the rest of the world. You're just going to be within here, and that'll be just a reference for me to be able to correct your form for things. So what we'll do is I'm going to kind of share this document that I have, and then I'm going to make sure that you guys have access to it. So I think I have the link copied, so I'm going to put it in the chat here. So, and then maybe Kim, if you can let me know if you have access to that, if it's public. That's going to be the quick outline of what we're going to be covering today. And we'll go over it pretty quickly. I think I'm just going to touch really lightly on each thing, and then I'm going to get an opportunity to kind of correct form for a couple different workouts and then answer questions about how you would go about doing this workout. And then I'll turn you guys loose so that you can do it on your own. So do we have access to that? Does it look good? Okay.
Working
cool.
on it.
Awesome. So this is through Google Docs. This is a public thing. You can also download it to view it offline if you don't have consistent internet access, or if that can be an issue, you can reference this at a further time as well. So what is high intensity interval training? You might have heard about it. It's a lot of CrossFit folks have a lot of workouts that are kind of focused in this format, and there's a lot of climbing specific workouts that are done in this format as well. But basically the idea of interval training is that I have a set amount of time when I'm doing something, and then I have a set amount of time where I'm doing less of that thing, or I have like an active rest recovery period, or I'm doing none of anything and I'm just resting, right? So I have these high intensity time frames and I have lower intensity time frames. So my higher intensity can be, maybe I'm doing explosive like box jumps, right? Or if I'm just in the apartment, then I'm doing like explosive jumps, or in the house. Whereas like my rest period might be, okay, I'm doing crunches. Or if I want a complete rest, okay, I'm doing nothing, right? I'm just resting. So the idea of this workout is that I have these chunks where I'm alternating. So I'm doing like 30 seconds on of this thing, and then 30 seconds of this lower period. And then those two different periods and how you structure them, how much time there is, are going to change depending on your skill set. So like how developed you are as an athlete, and what you're trying to do, and especially where your cardiovascular shape is. So what this workout does is it spikes your heart rate up really high, really fast, and it deprives your body of oxygen. So what's happening is during these rest intervals that you get, or these lower intervals, you're breathing super hard because your muscles are extremely deprived of that oxygen. And that's kind of having a lot of these other benefits that come later. So like increased metabolism, increased fat burning. So it's a really awesome workout. And, those are some of the big benefits. And the biggest one for quarantine is that you get these cardiovascular gains, exceptional cardiovascular gains, in this really small environment. So you can still burn a lot of fat, you can still keep your metabolism in check, despite only having like maybe a small grid of like open floor to work on, even if your house is relatively packed. So it's pretty cool. There's also a lot of workouts available, and you don't really need equipment. You can do most of this stuff just with your body weight. And we're gonna cover a lot of those different workouts here in the next couple minutes. But it's also not something you wanna do for every single workout, and there's a few reasons for that. It's extremely hard. The fatigue that you get is at a level that you might not have experienced in the past if you haven't done these type of workouts before. Your heart rate gets to a zone that almost feels uncomfortable, and you're kind of going back and forth a little bit with that. And there's a lot of repetitive motion. So you're doing a lot of like explosive work for a little bit, And that can be really hard on your joints. So if we're doing these repetitive things all the time, then you're putting yourself at higher risk for tendonitis and some other issues if you have any previous existing injuries. And then time-based intervals require generally an interval timer, right? So instead of doing some of this stuff like on your own accord of like, okay, like I'm just gonna do this many over the course of like an hour. You can, but to get like the best results out of this stuff, you're staying on the time frame of like, okay, I have 30 seconds on, now I have my 30 seconds off, and you're really consistent with it. So the interval timer and like using that combined with like a lot of the repetition stuff and the fact that by the end of it, you feel like you're dying makes it not the workout that's going to be something that, okay, this is the routine that I do 3 to 4 times a week. And ideally you're not doing the same routine 3 to 4 times a week because these things are so repetitive that it can be really hard on those same muscle groups if you use the same ones every time. So it's really good to switch it up if you're doing it on a somewhat regular basis. And with that in mind, I put together like this list of like, okay, well, if I'm going to switch it up or like if I'm going to do one of these workouts, how do I structure it? So this next part of the class, we're going to kind of go over like, okay, how do you build one of these HIIT workouts at home? Like, what do you do? And then what are some of these workouts, right? I'm going to open it up to the floor to be like, okay, I don't know what a jumping lunge is, right? Or I don't know what a butt kicker is, right? Like you can ask me those questions and then I'll be able to demo it. And then if you want to, then you can demo it as well. And then I can correct your form accordingly. So how do you build the HIIT workout? So we get the idea, right? We're doing these high intensity workouts where I'm going like 100% for X period of time. And then I'm going, like no percent or maybe only 10 to 15% for X period of time. And then we repeat that over and over again. The principle of now building this workout is that I'm not going to do this for longer than 30 minutes ever. I shouldn't have to. I can scale the workout in a lot of different ways, but that much work on your heart, it's really hard on your heart to put your heart in that high of a zone for that sustained period of time is not super beneficial to your body once you pass that 30-minute threshold. So like the demo workouts that I've listed today are only like 12 minutes long. Right? And you can do this for 12 minutes and feel destroyed. So if you want to go longer than that, like if you are super fit and you're used to this type of like interval training, then there's a lot of options to make it harder and you can go for longer. But the first principle of like, okay, we're building this workout, it's going to be short, right? If you've never done it before, I'd recommend just starting with 10 minutes and starting with workouts that you already know. Okay. So if it's 10 workouts or 12, the 12 sample that I put in the document, you're doing the first 2 to 3 minutes should be a warm-up period, right? So that means instead of doing these at 100%, you're going to dial them back and you're going to put them at about 50% for your first set, 60 to 75% for your second set, and then like 80 to 90% for your third set. So you're slowly ramping up to that 100%, right? There's other options too. If you wanted to condense your workout even more so, you could go, for like a quick jog up and down the stairs or like do a couple laps around your house or like just go around the block. If you're restricted to just exclusively being inside, then you can do just a shorter variation without a time frame of like each one of these workouts, just run through like a couple reps of every one that you're about to do in a really controlled way to just do a quick form check and make sure, okay, like I'm about to do 100 of these things in 10 minutes. Like, does my form look really good? Is there anything that I need to change? So I would say for those first 3 warm-up sets, I've kind of categorized these into different groups. So a lot of this heart rate stuff is also leg stuff and arm stuff, but these are things that are going to pump your heart rate up quickly in the beginning. So they're really good ones to do at like a 50% or 75% that are dialed back. So those would be like doing jump rope, explosive jumps. So jumping as high as you can. Then as soon as you come down, boom, you're exploding and you're coming right back up again. High knees, butt kickers, jumping lunges, high skips, burpees, all of this stuff that's it's like full body and like you're getting your heart rate is like getting taxed early on. So doing a few of those in the beginning to get that heart rate kind of like slowly ramped up over the course of like 3 minutes instead of just like, oh man, I went 100% from doing no activity, I went to 100%. That's going to be real hard on your body. So you want to be able to give yourself at least a few minutes to kind of ease into that. Then after that, okay, like how do I structure, like what type of workout should I be doing? You can do any of them. So it really depends on like what you want to work on. But my sample structure that I put in here is that you do 3 different core things, 3 different leg things, and 3 different upper body things, right? So that you're getting like the full body. stuff, if you do it in that way too, you'll last a little bit longer because you're working on different muscle groups. So you could bump back like a couple more minutes if you wanted to. You'll also be able to tax your full body oxygen wise a little bit better. Whereas like if you're just doing the same thing that you know you're good at, then your body's going to adjust to that and it's not going to help the most. So core workouts, lemon squeezers, V-ups, Russian twists, bicycles, leg raises, all these things are just examples, but the idea is that we're trying to pick things that involve some sort of dynamic movement. So they're not an isometric. There's something where your body has to be moving like actively, and something that you can ramp up the intensity of, right? Like I can't really ramp up the intensity of a repetition of a plank because there isn't a repetition, right? I'm just holding the plank, right? So that's not going to super drive my heart rate in a 30-second time frame. So all of these workouts are things that, okay, like I'm actively moving and they're going to spike my heart rate up a little bit, because that's the overall goal of this, is that I'm getting that heart rate up super high. Leg stuff, you'll notice that some of the heart rate things for warm-ups, a lot of those are leg specific, and you can replace them for the leg examples that I gave. So like the jumping lunges, right, would be a great one, or just even jump rope is a great one. But squats, lunges, side lunges, any of that, upper body, push-ups, and then different opportunities for doing push-ups too, instead of just hitting the same spot every time. Narrow grip, like a neutral, like regular shoulder width grip, wide, offset. You can do the same thing for pull-ups as well. If you have a pull-up bar available to you, you can do the same thing, like make sure you're doing having some variance in the pull-ups that you're doing. Arm circles work great too for your shoulders. If you have small weights, anything that's a smaller weight available to you, that's going to work your shoulders real hard in 30 seconds if you have a decent little bit of weight. Small arm circles is fantastic for that. And then dips can be done even just between two chairs. So if you're limited in the resources that you currently have, you can check out the dips as well. So that's just kind of the basic gist, right? So I'm trying to spike my heart rate. I'm trying to get up into it over the course of a few minutes, and then I'm hitting it real hard. I'm doing the 100% intensity for these intervals, right? And then I'm going for however many minutes that I can before my form starts to deteriorate, or I feel like my heart rate is getting up at an uncomfortable rate, right? Like if it gets up so high that you're like, I feel like I can't focus on this rep, I really can't catch my breath, then that's time to just call it, or maybe give yourself a full 1 to 2 minutes rest, right? These workouts really, really push yourself, and it's completely okay to take a minute off or 2 minutes off. You're like, nope, my heart rate's like getting way beyond where it should be. If you want to know like where it should be, there's heart rate charts that you can look up. But in general, you know, for folks that are average adult age and in decent shape, your heart rate shouldn't ever be going above like 170, 180, right? It should be consistent in that like maybe the like 150, 160 range for these real high intensity things, right? If you're getting into the like 180 and beyond range for too much of a sustained period of time, then that's not necessarily dangerous, but it's really hard on your body, and you're not going to want to do the workout again. So you want to make sure that it's dialed back enough that it's sustainable for you. So in terms of measuring your heart rate, there's a lot of tricks for that. If you want to check in, if you're like, I feel like I'm dying, you can be like, okay, well, what's my heart rate actually at? And then you can check your pulse. There's a few different tricks online, and I'll see if I can maybe link a couple of these after the fact. But if you have any sort of Apple Watches, have a nice heart rate monitor on them. I'm sure that some other like wearable tech has them as well these days. Those are good resources. And then more so than anything, just listening to your body. If you feel really uncomfortable, then you should probably stop, right? If you feel like this is a decent chunk of discomfort, but I can get through this, okay, like you're in the right zone, right? Like it's not gonna feel like a cakewalk. You're gonna reach a point where you're like out of breath, and that's the idea, is that you're getting your body completely out of breath so that you're trying to like breathe hard on those rest intervals and get ready to charge hard on the next minute. So that's just the gist of this. This is kind of a shorter clinic. I'm going to give I have a couple additional examples at the end that I'll talk about right before we leave. But before I get into kind of some more workout structure and answering some questions, is there any questions about these workouts that I have listed on the document? Like, are there any things that I put on there that you want me to correct your form with? Like, I can watch you and correct your form, or just demo. If you're like, I don't even know what that is, can you demo that to me so that I can see it? Just let me know, and I'll see if I can unmute you guys. And then if you, there we go, I think you're unmuted, but if your mic isn't working, you can just throw it in the chat. Just let me know if there's any that you want to demo. And then same for you too, Kim. If there's anything that you want me to demo, just throw it in the chat there, and I'll go for it. And I'll give you guys a couple minutes to look over that. And then if no one has questions, then I'll get into just kind of talking a little bit about some of those other workout variations I have at the end.
Sorry, I just dropped the question.
Oh, no worries. I think the easiest way to like,
phone.
oh no.
It's like I normally use the laptop and I'm so inept trying to navigate here.
The easiest way, I think, too, if you're starting these out, if you haven't done a workout like this before, I think the best way to structure like the workouts you should pick are the ones that you already know. It shouldn't be like, okay, I'm going to start with like some brand new thing that I haven't tried before. I would get really comfortable. Like if you're like, I've done squats, like I know how to do just a regular body weight squat. I know how to do a push-up. I know how to do just like a basic crunch. Boom. That's 3 that you can do right there. And then you know that you can do a lot of repetitions and you understand what that form looks like and you have a solid idea of it. Where I get nervous is if it's workouts that the participant is really unfamiliar with, because we're doing so many repetitions of a given thing that you could end up building like bad habits over time. And then your body is like used to doing that bad habit to get through the workout instead of focusing on like the form. There should be focused on the form first. And then it's like, okay, I know how to do this well. All right, now I'm gonna try and challenge myself and see if I can do this in this high intensity format. So you don't want something that's like super challenging, right? Like I can do a handful of pistol squats, right? Like I feel pretty comfortable with those, but I would never put those in like a HIIT workout because I would just get completely obliterated and wouldn't want to use my legs after that. Even when I do regular squats in a HIIT workout, I'm super sore for several days afterwards. So do we got any questions about those, or they seem pretty straightforward?
I wouldn't mind seeing form for squat and for the jumping lunges.
Sweet. Okay, let's do that. So
and lemon squeezers, if you could.
Oh yeah,
lemon
yeah.
squeezers too. Cool. Okay, lemon squeezers are actually my favorite. Let me see if I can get if you can be able to see me. I can come bring this over to the edge a little bit so you can see me a little bit better. Okay, so this is actually good. You can't see my full body, but you can see my lower half, at least for now, and this will be fine for squats. So I'll show you the front facing for squats first, right? So my knees should be maybe slightly more than shoulder width apart, right? And then my toes are facing forward to maybe slightly turned out, depending on how comfortable that is for me and if I have any like pre-existing conditions. As I come down, I'm trying to come down in a straight plane, and I'm sinking my weight into my heels, right? So I don't want my weight on my toes. I should almost be able to pick my toes like up and off the ground when I come down, right? Like when I'm in that squat position, you can see that like right now, like my toes aren't even on the ground. So obviously you're gonna keep your feet planted for balance when you're doing that, but that's not where the majority of your weight should be. It should all be in your heels. For a full repetition, we want to be focusing on coming down to like about at least like 90 degrees or so. If you want deeper, right, you can go deeper, but it's going to put a lot more stress on your knees, okay? Yeah. And then we're coming straight back up again, right?
Well, so like if I come down into the squat, does that look like reasonable form? It's hard to see from the angle, but.
Yeah, it looks great. Can you do it to the side too? I can watch you from the side so I can see. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
looks great. Like 2 of those.
Yeah, it looks great. And then and then as you're like ramping up the intensity of these things, it can be tricky because this is why there's a lot of issues why people get into CrossFit and it's like, just do the workout and just finish it. The idea is that you're doing good form for these reps, right? So like if you're starting to just like completely deteriorate and you can't even do the form that you're supposed to be doing, then the workout's too hard, right? You need like a larger rest interval, or you need to have like an easier modification of the workout. These should be things that are like relatively simple for you that you can master. And now the difficulty is coming from this like, okay, can I do it in this high intensity format?
Right.
So, okay, the jumping lunge, right? That was the next
Yeah.
one? Okay. So first off, for just regular lunge, I'm coming forward and I should be in about like this position. So I have my front leg is at about 90 degrees. My back leg is about 90 degrees. So instead of like adjusting when I'm down here, when I come down, I'm jumping and immediately coming back down into the opposite side, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense? So like I'm rotating back and forth each time. So I'm not, yeah, it looks great, Kim. And then you can dial it back.
I tend to jump farther. I tend to go into my yoga lunge and do like splits.
That's gonna be hard. That's gonna be real hard over time.
Exactly. I was just noticing that.
If you go too narrow, like I almost felt like when I was demoing too, I'm like a little bit on the narrow side because I'm trying to fit in this camera. But
Right.
like you don't want to spread yourself out too far, and you don't want to be too narrow either. There's like that nice like 90-90 is like pretty ideal.
Okay.
And to dial up the intensity for these, you want to like get a higher jump. So like the higher you can jump, the better. Okay, so lemon squeezers. So let's do a quick like lemon squeezer demo. So for lemon squeezers, you're going to be in like a hollow body position, right? Which looks like this. So my shoulders are up and off the ground. My legs are up and off the ground. And then I'm bringing my knees up and into my chest, right? Like this. So ideally, you're not grabbing your legs to help pull them in. And your knees, if they come like out a little bit, like to the sides as you come in, that's okay. But if you can keep them pretty close together, it'll help drive some of that lower core as well. When you're initiating these, you're gonna have a tendency to wanna like explode with like your upper body, but you really wanna try and drive that force from like your core. You wanna think if you can initiate like from the core instead of from the upper body or from like driving your knees up and into your chest, you're thinking, okay, can I do this? The form looks great. You guys look good for that.
Cool.
Do we have any other questions for demoing? Any other things on this list that we don't know?
Oh gosh.
Or things that you do know, but you want me to take a look and maybe see if I can give you some suggestions?
No.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think I know everything. Yeah, I think yeah, we got most of it.
Cool. So I'll talk a little bit just about variations, and then we'll wrap things up. So how do you do this, right? Like, let's say you start it and you're like, crap, this is way too hard. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. How do I like dial this back and like still continue to do this workout instead of just bailing on it halfway through, right? It's quick changes you can make. You can change your intervals. You can stop the workout, change the interval that you have on an interval timer. And I'll talk about getting one of those in a second too, but instead of doing like 30 on, 30 off, you can switch it to only 20 on, 40 off. Or if you're still struggling, you could do 15 seconds on, 45 off. Like as long as you're getting at least 15 to 20 seconds in a work, you'll see a benefit for sure, right? I would say the ideal setup is probably like when you know you're really fit for this, you're doing like 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, repeating that like 8 to 12 times for some of these things and then taking a break and doing some more sets, right? That's when you're like, okay, I have that like high intensity fitness. But until then, I think the 30 on, 30 off, that's a format we do with the teen kids too. I think that's a really good standard one to get like a really solid workout in. How to make it a little bit easier aside from that, longer breaks between sets or just taking a full like couple minutes off. You're like, oh crap, like I'm supposed to switch and do core right now, take like 3 minutes off. Just like go grab a drink of water, cool down for a second, and then come back to it. The goal is to get you moving and get your heart rate up for a while, right? Like if this is the first time you try it and then you get like 4 minutes in and you're like, nope, never again, then it's not gonna do your body any help, right? So the goal here is to kind of ease you into it. I would even maybe recommend that like for your first go around all the way through, you're not even trying like 100% intensity for a lot of these repetitions. You're trying maybe like 75% just to get a feel for it. Like, what does it feel like to go through this workout? And like, what am I gonna feel like at the end of this? Like, if I'm doing 70% intensity for, you know, like push-ups and I get to like the 6th set and my chest is just blasted, maybe I don't wanna do push-ups right away in this, right? So then how do you make it harder? Let's say like you run it through and you're like, actually, oh, like this actually wasn't too bad. I'm in pretty good shape for this. How do I up the challenge a little bit? The smaller rest intervals, like we talked about, maybe 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, or I would say in no point in time are you doing any more than 30 seconds of hard work, right? Like ideally you're only at the 30 seconds of hard work and then you're taking your rest time. So to make it harder, instead of lengthening that intensity interval, you're just doing a smaller rest interval. So you're saying, okay, instead of like this 30 seconds of rest, I'm only going to give my body like 10 to 15 seconds of rest, right? And that's kind of what we're going for, because we want your body a chance, right? Like you want to like work it hard. Okay, now give it like a little bit of a breather. Now work it hard. If it doesn't ever get that chance, then you're gonna crash. So you have to make sure that you're giving it that opportunity to recover some of the oxygen that it's losing. Added weight. So some of these workouts, like a lot of these guys that are ultra fit CrossFitters will do this stuff with like a 20-pound weight vest on. I would say if you're like doing this for 10 to 12 minutes and you're like, no, it's like not too bad, and like I don't want to do this for like 15 minutes, but I want to make it like a little bit harder, see if you can throw on like 5 pounds. You know, even 5 pounds, like a little tiny bit of weight makes a huge difference when you're doing this high volume of repetition work. You can do different, more challenging selection of workouts too. Like if you're like, okay, I picked the stuff I know I'm really comfortable with, but I also know there's these other things that I can do, but I'm just not that good at them. Pick those things instead. And then that'll help raise the difficulty for you as well. Just as long as you're comfortable with the form and you know that you can do those with good form, then add those in to challenge yourself. And then more sets. Like as long as you're not going past the 30-minute threshold, that's kind of the magic number in terms of HIIT workouts. Like when does a HIIT workout then become more of like an endurance type thing? And then you're subconsciously like slowing down how much effort you're putting into each minute because you know you're going to have to go for that long, right? You don't want it any longer than 30. And I would say 30 minutes still is like, most elite people aren't even going to be doing that. I would put a cap at like 20 if you're a beginner. And then I'd say the sweet spot for starting out and getting into it would be like in the 10 to 15 minute range. You can do 10 minutes and feel really worked and be like, wow, I'm really tired and that only took 10 minutes and I got my heart rate where it needed to be. And then some additional examples. So these are a couple that are pretty popular. If you look at that and you're like, or if you do a couple of these and you're like, oh, these are all right, but like, I want some other stuff. One we do with the kids that I've done. So I've been coaching competitive climbing for it's been over a decade now. And this has been like a classic, like since I was competing and like even through now, this is just like a solid base fitness one to do. The Yosemite Minute is 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 of any core workout every minute for 20 minutes. So if you do it quick enough, it works out to about 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. It might be a little bit more than that. But that one's awesome, and you can change how many minutes you do. You can do 5, 10, 15, you can do 20, you can do however many you want. You can dial it into your needs for that day. That one's really, really solid. And then a very close variation of that, but the CrossFit version is the Murph Workout. So that's when you run a mile first, which might not be doable, so you can cut that out. And then it's 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and then instead of 15 of any core workout, it's 15 squats. And then you finish with a 1 mile run. And that's not like interval time based. If you don't want to do something with an interval timer, that's just how quickly can you get all this stuff done in, right? So my recommendation again is if you do it like on the minute, similar to the Yosemite Minute, then you could be like, okay, I'm doing like 10 to 15 minutes of this. And then in that sense, like these are kind of similar, but you know, the runs are something that we don't really have access to right now, but they are nice, like in terms of getting fully warm for doing something that's that high level of intensity for that duration. But that's about it. This one's a shorter one for sure. You know, the key here is just being able to like do it. Just be like, all right, I'm gonna do it, and then have the interval timer and set yourself and go. So how to get an interval timer to make sure that you can do this okay. You can just look it up on any like Google Play or on the App Store for iPhone. You just search for interval timer and there should be some free options, and most of them will give you like, okay, what's your high intensity time? And that would be like, you just put 30 seconds in, and then what's your lower intensity time, which would be like your rest time. You put 30 seconds in there, and that's like, okay, now how many sets are you going to do? You can be like, oh, okay, I'm going to do like 12, right? Or for the sample one, or however many you want. And then it'll switch the screen between colors and usually give you like a ding, like a chime or something, so that way you don't have to be constantly looking at the screen. It'll just chime every time you're supposed to switch. Yeah, you got a question?
Yeah, just a question. I'm curious, how have you seen that HIIT training positively affects your climbing? Just
yeah, so
specifically.
Quick recovery time. So being able to recover quickly between attempts is the biggest thing. Like your heart rate gets to such a level of fitness from doing this type of stuff that like a bouldering, like a pretty anaerobically intensive work, like a boulder problem, like you could give an attempt and then fall off the last move of like a 12 move boulder problem that might be a little bit longer, right? And be like, crap, like that was my attempt for the day. But if you do this type of stuff, it's like, oh, I can try this like 8 more times and still be totally fine. So what's happening then is it's allowing you in a given session to not be losing out on attempts because you're too tired. You're getting more attempts out of a session, basically. So this type of stuff it's going to give you full body fitness, and that'll translate some to some moves, but it's not going to help your climbing movement. It's not going to make you a smarter or better climber, but it will make you a more fit climber. So if you're like, oh no, I'm making these mistakes, you can be like, well, good thing I'm in really good shape and I can compensate it with now doing like an extra 15 attempts if I have to, right? So I'd say if anything, I see the biggest benefit from this type of stuff in bouldering attempts and bouldering stuff, because bouldering is such an anaerobic thing. I would see less of a crossover and a benefit to like sport climbing. But for like speed climbing and for bouldering, this is like the gold standard. This will help you a lot. If you're more of a sport climber, this will also help just in terms of your ability to rest like on route. And like once you're resting in a position, be like your heart rate will just like learn how to like drop like a lot faster. And that's a pretty big benefit as well. But I'd say there's still probably some other things that you could be doing that might be a little bit more sport climbing specific. But for me personally, at least, like I've done a lot of this stuff and I see the biggest benefit in bouldering, and specifically for the kids and stuff too, bouldering competitions. When you're going from like 4 minutes on and then like 4 minutes off, and you have like the short window of like recovery time, being able to have your body like completely get all of the oxygen back that it needs and be like, all right, I'm ready to give like 100% again, like right away, is a level of fitness that a lot of people don't get, and a lot of boulders don't get because they're used to having all the time in the world. Like giving an attempt and being like, like I'll just rest like 10 to 15 minutes before I try again. Or like giving an attempt and then like getting frustrated and giving 2 or 3 more attempts right away back to back, and like having that completely fatigue you and then being like, oh, well now, you know, my grip strength shot for the rest of the session. So I'd say that's the big crossover there, is like this helps for recovery time, right? Like how quickly can I get my body back on the wall? And then it does like all this other stuff. Like you might notice, like if you're not used to, for climbers, don't work their chest, don't work their triceps generally a lot. So you're doing like a lot of push-ups or like a lot of leg work too. You might notice like next time you're on like a compression problem or something, like, oh, like I can actually like squeeze harder now. Like I have the ability to like squeeze, or like my core is like a lot more fit. I have the ability to like keep that foot on now. So there'll be a little bit of translation there, but the biggest one is going to be the recovery time between burns.
So Justin, I'm curious, is there a particular like heart rate variation that's the ideal? You know, if you're hitting 165, say, in your intensity, what are you wanting your heart rate to get down to during the rest? Or am I
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's gonna differ by the individual, and I'd say for most people when they start doing this, it's gonna not change that much, because 30 seconds is such a short period of time.
You're stepping higher.
Yeah. So I would say to hold off on that. But what I've found is that like it is a very individual thing. If you do have a heart rate monitor, use it during these things so that you get the data, and then you can look at it afterwards and be like, oh, I noticed that like, you know, now that I'm 3 or 4 weeks in, I have the ability to like get down a little bit more. So, and like, this is like on the day when I felt the best, like look at those numbers when like, okay, I felt the best. Where was I getting to? Okay, I could get down to like, you know, in the 130, 140 range, like during these 30-second rests. Okay, I need to get down in that 130, 140 range now. And I know I'm capable of it. So I'm going to like focus on getting down that low each time. But it's going to be different for everybody. I personally have a really hard time getting the heart rate back down within the short interval, even when I'm fit for these. But I would say that like the heart rate monitor is going to be your best friend, and the data is your best friend too. Like having that like backlog of like, okay, I can look at where I started and then like where I am now, and like what that difference is going to be helpful. And it also depends on like your age and your fitness level. And but you can look up at some different heart rate charts and kind of see and just get an idea of like, okay, like I'm at 100% intensity, right? Now I'm taking a break, I'm at 0% intensity, but I'm still coming off of that 100%. And you can do a little bit of math and kind of figure out where you should be.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, any other questions? Cool. I think that's it, everybody. So thanks for coming. I'm going to put real quick and do this at each one of these ones that I've done. I'm going to put my email in the chat. It's really simple. It's justin@mesarim.com. If you have any questions, if you run through one of these workouts, you have some more questions, or there's some things that I didn't get into in that document, you can feel free to reach out directly to me via email, and I'll get back to you and let you know. And in terms of like my biggest advice for these, if you get psyched on them and you do them, make sure you're not doing more than like 3 a week. These are really hard on your body. They can be really fun, and they can be kind of competitive too. But just be mindful of how much you're doing in such a short period of time. Even though it's like only 10 to 12 minutes, you could be doing like the most squats you've ever done in your lifetime in that 10 minutes, right? So just be mindful of that. And like, if you're really feeling it, like if you're really sore from this workout and you're like, oh, I'm planning on doing this like 2 days from now, don't do it. Like wait until your body's fully recovered and then do it again. There's definitely an adjustment period where I'd say, like, if you do it the first time, give yourself like 3 or 4 days plus to recover before you do it a second time. And then like, as your body gets more and more adjusted to it, then you'll be ready to do more. But drink lots of water, make sure you're hydrated and you're ready, and don't underestimate like how hard 10 minutes of hard work can be.
Thanks for the document as well.
Yeah, for sure. That should be open indefinitely too. So you can just access it whenever, and it's just a resource you can refer to. But I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting. Thanks for coming by. Feel free to shoot me an email if you got any other questions.
All right, thanks, Justin.
Yeah, for sure. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
Yeah.